Notice that we have this function right here, the square root of 2 minus x plus 1. And the directions say use function operations to find the domain. So domain on your last test, for some of you went okay, for some of you went well, and for some of you it did not go well. This is your time to lean in and to focus and to see how do we now determine domain again. I don't know what this graph looks like. If I were to graph that, I would be curious, what does that look like? I can't sketch it real quickly. But what I can see is this is function f plus function g. So remember we looked yesterday at addition, subtraction, multiplication, division of functions. This is two functions being added together. And we said, let's find the domain of one of them and the domain of the other and look at the overlap. X plus 1, that is just a line. And what's the domain of a line? Exactly, all real numbers, negative infinity to infinity. Okay? However, square roots have a restriction. When we have a square root, we have to say 2 minus x must be greater than or equal to 0. Every time you see a square root, you'll set it greater than or equal to 0. And then we need to solve that inequality. As I subtract the 2, I get a negative x greater or equal to negative 2. And I divide by my negative 1, x is less than or equal to positive 2. So we have two domains here. I'm going to write this out only once, okay? We're not going to do it every time. But the first domain of negative infinity to infinity is going to look like that. The second domain of x less than or equal to 2 is going to look like this. So the domain is the overlap of those two. And the overlap is obviously going to be from negative infinity to positive 2. Very good with that? Okay. The next one, I have two functions. This is f and this is g, and they are being multiplied together. X cubed, this cubic, has that kind of a shape. What's the domain of a cubic? All real numbers from negative infinity to positive infinity. The next one is a line. What's the domain of a line? It is also all real numbers, negative infinity to infinity. So if one is from negative infinity to infinity, and the other one is negative infinity to infinity, the overlap is negative infinity to infinity, all real numbers.
That's so easy. I love it when we get easy problems.
Letter C. Is there a problem with cube root functions?
No.
You could take the cube root of positives or negatives. So the domain of the top is all real numbers, negative infinity to infinity. Now, careful as I explain this. Don't jump too fast on this one. The bottom one is a parabola, and the domain of a parabola is also all real numbers. However, we have to remember that when we're dividing, you can't divide by 0. What numbers would produce 0 in the bottom?
3 and negative 3.
So therefore, x cannot be positive 3 or negative 3. On the test, some of you then went and wrote this in interval notation, and you wrote it as follows. That is not correct because you're missing the middle part. Everybody see that? That's the correct interval notation for that. Folks, if you write it like this on the test, that's fine. I'll give you full credit. That's fine. If it's just x can't be 3 or negative 3, that's sufficient. But if you're writing interval notation, then it needs to be like that. You need to have that middle part in there. Okay? Try letter D on your own. Try letter D on your own. I believe in you. You're super smart. You're the best of the best. The hope of all humanity. My generation puts trust in you that we will have Social Security someday.
Oh.
Okay, slowly work the problem out.
He got it all. He got it all. He got it on $3.99.
Everybody okay with that? So the trick is, you guys, if I were to graph that, I don't know what it looks like. I don't. But I'm guessing that the graph starts at 7/2. There are no negative values that work for this, okay? Because I look at the overlap. All right, two more. Letter E. The top is a parabola. The domain of a parabola is? The bottom's a cubic. And the domain of a cubic? But it's division. I can't divide by 0. Does anybody know what number would produce 0 in the denominator? It is -1. So therefore, the domain is x cannot be -1. And finally, for my last one, a very interesting function. This is f, and this is g. They are being multiplied together. I'm going to look at the easy one. I see 4 minus x to the 5th power. Everybody agree if you were to multiply that out, you get an x to the 5th, an x to the 4th, an x to the 3rd, so on and so forth. That's just a polynomial. And the domain of any polynomial is all real numbers. That one was easy. Then we look at the square root of 3 minus x. Square roots are problems. So I say 3 minus x must be greater than or equal to 0. I subtract the 3. And I divide by the negative x less than or equal to 3. So what that means for me is that the domain is from -infinity to +3. We okay with that? I just want to make my last point before you guys head into your assignment. I'm going to show you what you want to be doing, but I'm going to plug that in my calculator. So that means the graph should only exist from -infinity up to 3, and then it should stop. Now I'm going to go ahead and type it in here. I'm going to need somebody to help me so I can remember what to type in. I got the square root of 3 minus x, and I multiply that by, is it 4 minus x?
Yep.
4 minus x raised to the 5th power?
Yep.
So I don't know what the graph looks like, but I bet it stops at 3. There it is. I guess the graph looks like that. It heads off that way, and it looks like it just stops right at 3. So although we don't know exactly what it looks like, we know the numbers that give outputs for it. And that's rather interesting. Take out your assignment. As I look at Orion's assignment from yesterday, we can see that we left off at this section 2. Today, all you need to go through is section 2. And the first 2 problems actually happen to be the same because I forgot to change them. Only got 5. So you got this time to knock out those 5 problems and then ask questions on the other stuff you have and have time to work. Right now, we are scheduled to finish this unit on Friday, which means we will have time to work on Monday and Tuesday, test on Wednesday. When does this? When does all this CNA stuff happen?
Next week on Tuesday is our last day, I think.
Tuesday's your last day?
I think so.
Okay. I wonder if the CNA people might need an extra day like Thursday just for the number of days that they're missing right now. So I'll have to try to talk to some CNA people and see where we're at. Let me stop the video and I'm going to